Now the moment we've all been waiting for.
I am Nate Riggle, and you are listening to The Way of the Bonfire. Hey there, you know what's crazy about being a solo podcaster? is you overthink everything because you can't have the person that's on the podcast with you kind of fill in the gaps of all the stuff that you say. So you're thinking to yourself constantly, like, am I going to drive the point home? That's why coming together and having people connect is so powerful, because we complement, we become so much more together than we would be on our own. Anyway, I've been thinking way too much about this day one, so I'm going to put it out there. And if it's not perfect, well, then I guess find some supplemental stuff on your own. Go look into the topic yourself. But today I want to talk about seeking and choosing discomfort and how there's a nuance there, right? It's not the power of no pain, no gain all by itself. It's not the power of getting out of the comfort zone, because there's a huge difference between when it's forced upon you, if you don't choose it, and the personal power that we're using and taking advantage of, that we've been gifted to choose. That if you can infuse everything with more choice, then whatever the thing is that might already be a good thing becomes even more powerful, because now it's linked to your agency. And I don't want to just get stuck up in all these terms. So I'll just start with an example. I used to kind of like winter because I used to snowboard a lot, and it didn't cost like just these ridiculous amounts of money to just go down a hill on a board. And so that kind of took the sting out of winter for me. I enjoyed it. I used to like to sled more when I was a kid. I like going with my kids, but I don't like it as much as they do. And I don't really like winter. I don't like the cold unless I've chosen it. I love doing a good cold plunge or a cold shower or a polar bear swim. I like to go and be still, if I can go snowboarding, or if I can go and have a good time with my kids sledding, playing, building snowmen, all that kind of stuff, because I'm choosing the activity in the cold. I'm not, but when the problem with winter in general is it's forced upon me. I do have a choice to move somewhere else and spend time elsewhere where there isn't cold. And I do that sometimes, but I don't like having it forced upon me. It is exciting to jump in a cold river and swim around, but I am the biggest wuss when my house is cold, because I didn't pick it, right? Maybe it was my wife just, trying to be careful with the thermostat there. Or maybe it's just because I have leaky windows. But either way, I woke up and it's cold, and I'm not going to try to jump into this cold shower and have this. That's all over the internet, right? Everybody's talks about cold plunges and all their benefits, and I totally agree with all that stuff. It still sucks when you do it, but it's so good when you can get into the habit of choosing those kinds of things. Why is the choice part such a big difference? And what is the impact of that? There's a lot of really good stuff out there talking about this concept. I like to enjoy things. I like when things are easy and effortless. But I know that there is so much to be had by choosing discomfort. I'm going to read a couple quotes. This one's, I think, is from Joe Rogan, and I know he's a polarizing person. I'm not trying to cause a divide or whatever there. But he says, I like voluntary adversity. That's what I'm talking about. There's another quote by, I think it's James Clear, where he says, imposter syndrome is exactly what you should be seeking. And it's funny because I've talked so much about trying to get past all of the different forms of baggage and what do I need to let go of and why do I feel inconfident about certain things. why you go to therapy, that's all valid. And it's all super important, especially if you've never done it. If you haven't gone, if you think that there's nothing to deal with inside of your unconscious or non-conscious portion of your mind, and that you haven't ever, that you don't accumulate baggage and that you're kind of above that, you just don't dwell on it, you move on. I'm sorry, because that's going to catch up with you. And I don't think imposter syndrome is something that we want to have as our default state. But when things get kind of effortless and you get so good at something and you've got mastery, true mastery doesn't have an end. We should be seeking that imposter syndrome again. First of all, if we can get into the right mindset of that, it changes the way we look at everything. If we're seeking things like not being not being in our element, not being 100% confident, and that feeling of butterflies in your stomach, amazing things happen to people who were nervous but did it anyway. Like, you want to do something every day that you have an urge to avoid, or that something that scares you, because you're choosing it to do it, right? If it just happens, then maybe you'll get some of the benefit, but I still think you'll get more benefit. And I always have gotten more benefit when I choose that thing. Or if somebody brings it up and they say, hey, I know this isn't your big, this is kind of, might cause some trepidation. I've been trying to default to, let's do it then. If it's going to suck, I think we should probably do that. Not if it's going to cause suffering, unnecessary suffering and sadness and pain for other people. We're not trying to cause that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm getting at. But what I'm saying is we should learn to love and celebrate the nervousness, the awkwardness, the rejection. I got rejected today. I mean, I'm in business development, sales, and so if I'm not getting rejected, then that means I'm probably not doing my job. Or I've gotten too cushy of a thing going on, and I'm not reaching the potential that's there waiting for me. And this is across all categories. If you're looking closely enough, I've been thinking a lot about how do we enjoy ourselves even when there's so much suffering, even when there's so much difficulty, and life is most certainly not fair or equitable or equal based off of the way that kind of just the traditional way of looking at it, of saying, oh, each person has a right to have exactly the same stuff based on, and then on that front also, especially if they've put in the right amount of effort or done the right things, it doesn't play out like that. But there, in my mind, the way that everything is truly constructed from a heavenly and a universal standpoint, and because we have a higher power in God, whether you want to believe that or not, there is a better picture that kind of governs. It doesn't kind of govern, it governs all of this. And that's that even though everything's not fair, even though everything doesn't go how we expected it to go, and there is inevitable, incredible suffering and tragedy, both mentally and physically, the beautiful thing is that in the long run, and not just in the long run, but with a different perspective, which is a big part of the way of the bonfire, finding that better perspective, not just a trick of the mind, but seeing things for how they really are, can make all of that transform into a good thing. And you say, well, what's good about the Holocaust? Nothing is good about the Holocaust. Nothing is good about evil. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that the fact that we have a choice to decide what we're going to make of difficulty, and that we can choose how we're going to be uncomfortable outside of what's already forced on us, it's everywhere. There's so much beauty in that we can choose what we're going to make of something, and we can go and seek out the hard stuff. that's good for us. That's what I'm getting at. Not that we can push unnecessary suffering and evil just to feel discomfort. That's not the point. But back to the kind of the consequences of this. Comfort, it feels safe now. But as I'm reading actually something here from Jonathan Fields. He wrote the Good Life Project, and he has a bunch of other stuff, Sparketypes and all kinds of cool things. But he's saying comfort feels safe now, but fast forward 5, 10, or 20 years, will you look back and wonder, what if I had tried that new idea, taken that leap? And he says, regret often stems not from the risks we took, but from the ones we avoided. It accumulates silently, rooted in paths not explored, passions not pursued, and potential left untapped. I've said this on the podcast before. I don't like when people say you have a lot of potential to me. I see a lot of potential. I don't want to be potential. I want to be fulfilled potential. I don't want to be wood in the bonfire that hasn't ever been lit and gotten to blaze and see what's possible. And a lot of research shows that people tend to regret inaction more than action in the long term. And that I'm not downplaying and saying I got this perfect, right? I still have plenty of habits and things. I seek comfort. I like comfort. And failure sucks. Like getting rejected, I'll admit it. Like there is a feeling there, like, And I think what a lot of us do and what we screw up when it comes to rejection and the things that we brought on ourselves that we've chosen that ended up not going the way we expected is we think because we got rejected or because we tried this thing and we got laughed at for it, or we didn't get chosen even though we put ourselves out there, or we didn't get all these likes, or we're not accepted in the group, then we have this automatic sense of, oh, well, that must mean something. It might mean something to other people, but don't let their choice on what it means give you the ultimate meaning of what those failures is. I want to get to the point where I can say and truly embody this. It's actually a verse from the Bible, or a couple verses from the Bible in Romans. It says, it is Romans 5:3-5. It says, and not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience. We want to choose to glory in the tribulations, not just in the great blessings that we've been given. Because everything, if we can switch into this sort of ability to have our agency, then a lot of things, I mean, losing a child, I wouldn't glory in that. But I want to glory in a lot of my tribulations, because it says, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope, and hope maketh not ashamed. You see, we can choose to seek out the discomfort, or if the discomfort is forced upon us, to not let that transform us in the wrong way. We could sit here and be like, this is such nonsense. Now I'm bitter. I'm going to give vengeance for this. I'm going to prove the world wrong. I'm going to prove that I mean something. To who? Who are you proving that to? Because I don't think that they care. Whoever, in most cases, if that's our default state, is spite and just keeping that chip on the shoulder, oh my goodness, it's a good motivator. And I spent most of my life doing that. But you know what's an even better motivator? Is doing the things you don't like, but acting like you love it. That's another quote, but I might change this one to not just acting like you love it, but getting to a point where you do love it. I somehow love doing the dishes now. I used to hate that, but now I see it as there's so many benefits in just doing the dishes. It's so simple. I get to serve. I get to make my house cleaner. I get to take it off my wife's plate. No pun intended. Nobody bugs me when I'm doing the dishes. There's so many benefits hidden in the things that we think we hate to do. I'm not saying we should love everything. There's stuff that I do not like. I hate doing admin. And I hate doing stuff that's not bringing some kind of greater value into the world, but it just has to be done. I don't want that to be my default state. It's just doing a bunch of stuff that I don't like. I can enjoy things because they're just inherently enjoyable. I heard this from Brendan Burchard today. I'm part of one of his groups or communities, and he said today, nobody wants to live a life of compliance. Another one of his partners in that said, stop living a life of obligation. That comes back to the choice thing. Do you want to be tired because you had to be tired? Or because you actively made decisions, I actively made decisions to wear myself out in doing the best possible stuff I could be doing today? Working on my dream, doing this podcast, hopefully putting a voice out there that changes the way somebody thinks about, or maybe this message is too long and I'm rambling and I'm too passionate for you. And you're like, oh, I don't know. But just one little tiny nugget of that sinks in for one person listening to this, and they don't realize it, but that gets their mind thinking in such a way that there's a chain reaction that they didn't even see because they heard a voice on a podcast from some random dude halfway across the world or halfway across the country or in a different state that knows nothing about them, but knows about the human condition through experience and research and just really actually going through it myself. Maybe that changes the way you react after you hear this today. And then that choice that you make because of where your mind was and the viewpoint that you had on the world and the way to go about it and the way to tackle it made you do something differently than you normally would have done. And it creates better things that compound. And I'm not taking credit for all that stuff, but I do feel like this is a great use of my time. I'm not having this forced upon me. I'm choosing things that are difficult. It's difficult for me to just sit here and ramble and not feel like I just have diarrhea of the mouth and nobody cares. I'm putting myself out there every time I do this, but I'm starting to love it more and more. One, because it helps me process the crap I've been dealing with and think about, helps me share it, but also because it's difficult. And I know it's not perfect. And I know that I still have so much to learn, and people are going to listen to this and be like, this guy, right? But I like that. You see, we can glory in the good and the bad in a lot of situations that we're not taking advantage of. There's a book by the biographer Edmund Morris, I think. Anyway, Edmund something is the author, and the book is called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. So he did like a 3-part series of Theodore Roosevelt's life, like the beginning, the middle, and the end. But this is from the book, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. I recommend everyone read this. The quote is, tumbling into bed at midnight or in the small hours, Theodore could luxuriate in healthy tiredness, satisfied that he had not wasted 1 minute of his waking hours. If you've had a day like that, you know what this is talking about. Because you can be exhausted from stuff that doesn't feel like a healthy tiredness. It feels like exhausted. I want to give up. What am I doing? And I would argue that a big part of that is our mindset. A big part of that is how you see the world and how, coming back to it, how did you choose your discomfort today? Another big one. And so maybe you're thinking, if I'm doing all these risky things or if I'm doing things that are uncomfortable, doesn't that cause things to be less stable? Couldn't that? Yeah, by the nature of it, it's less stable. But you don't have to make drastic changes overnight. Just take on a challenging project, learn a new skill, seek conversations that push your thinking. And while they're happening and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is how this person thinks, challenge yourself to be more open, to be more humble. And say like, I don't understand what they're saying here. Maybe I'm making assumptions. Maybe I'm wrong. And I have been for a long time. And can be a scary process if you haven't done it in a while, or if you're not used to it, or if you don't have this mindset of, I'm going to grow from this. So when things get uncomfortable, think of that as a signal that you're doing stuff. You're building strength. Good stuff's happening. In the moment, it's probably going to feel like you're losing and you need to change directions. And it does feel cozy when you're feeling like I've been doing this job for 20 years at this one place and my money's comfortable and I don't feel like the wolves are at the door. But you know what uneasy feeling I'm talking about? Where you kind of feel that No, there's more. Not because I'm greedy, not because I'm not grateful, but because maybe I was meant to do more. Like, what am I not seizing because I'm comfortable? This is one from Chris Voss. He wrote the book Never Split the Difference. He's a ex FBI hostage negotiator. I saw this one in one of my email. I subscribe to newsletters and I have to curate them and get them out of there because it gets too crazy. But I do try to pull nuggets out and share them so that you have something curated. And this one's by Chris Voss. It says, if you're not being criticized, you're not pushing hard enough. Once you accept that criticism is a byproduct of success, you won't feel the need to defend yourself or react to your critics. That one's tough for me because there are still insecurities in there. And the people that I love and value most, like when they criticize me, especially my wife, oh my goodness, if she says something that just makes me feel like I didn't measure up or I'm not bringing it like I should be, or she expected me to step up my game in some way, even though I've been trying so hard and working intentionally on that. This is a hard one to do because it's like, is it just a lost cause? Like, is it not going to be good enough even when I do everything I can? But if you flip it with this statement and say, criticism is a byproduct of success. Now, don't screw this up and be like, well, anytime I get called out for something, it's because I'm doing awesome. That's not true, right? But if you're with people that are trying to help you be better, that means you're not just coasting. You're surrounding yourself with people that expect more and that want you to do more. You're not taking the easy way, and that's good. They're not your enemies. You can turn your enemies into your best friends and your family with this kind of mindset of, I'm choosing my discomfort. Even when they bring it to me, I'm choosing not to let it take me down or shut me down because of their opinion. But I'm going to use this as a signal that I'm doing good things. I'm trying, right? There's more for me to go and get, and I'm learning patience. I've been reading this book called Anti-Time Management by Richie Norton, and it is the best book I've read in maybe 3 years. He says the opposite of certainty in life is called freedom. If you want to be free, you must be willing to advance your life into the uncertain. You can choose rejection to fuel you or rule you. Choose, he says, again, there's that choice word. Choose rejection to fuel you, not rule you. Man, I hope that somebody hears this today and decides to commit to this, or at least decides to try it out at the very least I don't care if it's a day or a week or a month, but just pay attention as you seek and choose discomfort, or if it's thrust upon you, you choose to make it something that's a good thing instead of having not only the thing forced upon you, but also the way you think about it forced upon you by norms, your habits, your mindset that you're stuck in. If you can choose to go and find the discomfort, the kind of discomfort that you want, pick your poison, and seek out more rejection and more awkwardness and more discomfort and new things that are good things that light you up and have that healthy exhaustion at the end of the day, man, you don't ever sleep better than that. When you know you left it all out there on the field, you put as much fuel on that fire as you could. And if you didn't, good. Again, good. Now you feel uncomfortable because you didn't bring it all. This will give me a chance to do more. I don't want to win easily. I don't want to have everything be so effortless. I think that this is one of the greatest secrets in life, seeking and choosing discomfort instead of having it chosen for you. Go get them.